Everyone says renting is throwing money away, but in 2025, the math actually tells a very different story. I'll show you exactly when renting wins. In fact, you could be throwing away up to $50,000 if you buy instead of rent in certain situations. This video is for first-time home buyers who are struggling to decide between renting and buying a home in 2025. You will learn how to calculate the costs of renting versus buying, the pros and cons of buying a home in 2025, and when renting might be the better option. H2. What are the costs of renting versus buying? The cost of renting versus buying a home in 2025 can vary greatly depending on your location, credit score, and other factors. For example, the median rent in the US is around $1,800 per month, while the median mortgage payment is around $2,500 per month. However, when you factor in the costs of maintenance, property taxes, and insurance, the total cost of owning a home can be upwards of $3,500 per month. H2. What are the pros of buying a home? One of the biggest pros of buying a home is the potential for long-term wealth creation through equity buildup. For example, if you buy a home for $500,000 and it appreciates in value by 3% per year, you could gain around $15,000 in equity per year. Additionally, buying a home can provide a sense of stability and permanence, as well as tax benefits like mortgage interest and property tax deductions. H2. What are the cons of buying a home? One of the biggest cons of buying a home is the high upfront costs, including the down payment, closing costs, and other fees. For example, if you put 20% down on a $500,000 home, you'll need to come up with $100,000 in cash. Additionally, buying a home can be a liquid investment, meaning it can take months or even years to sell the property if you need to access the funds. H2. When does renting win over buying? Renting can be the better option when the costs of owning a home are too high, or when you're not planning to stay in the same location for an extended period. For example, if you're moving to a new city for a job and don't know how long you'll be staying, renting might be the better option. Additionally, if the rent-to-buy ratio in your area is high, meaning the cost of renting is significantly lower than the cost of buying, renting might be the better choice. H2. How do I calculate the costs of renting versus buying? To calculate the costs of renting versus buying, you can use a rent versus buy calculator, which takes into account factors like the purchase price of the home, the rent, the interest rate, and other costs. For example, if you're considering buying a $500,000 home with a 20% down payment and a 30-year mortgage at 4% interest, the calculator might show that the total cost of owning the home is around $2,500 per month, while the cost of renting a similar property is around $2,000 per month. H2. What are the pros and cons of renting? One of the biggest pros of renting is the flexibility and freedom to move to a new location without being tied down to a mortgage. For example, if you're a freelancer or remote worker, you might need to move to a new city or state for a project, and renting makes it easier to do so. Additionally, renting can be a more affordable option, especially in areas with high housing costs. However, one of the biggest cons of renting is the lack of control over the property, as well as the potential for rent increases over time. H2. How do I make the rent or buy decision in 2025? To make the rent or buy decision in 2025, you should consider your individual circumstances, including your financial situation, lifestyle, and goals. You should also research the local real estate market and consider factors like the rent-to-buy ratio, the potential for appreciation in value, and the costs of maintenance and property taxes. Ultimately, the decision to rent or buy a home in 2025 depends on your unique situation and priorities. If you're still unsure about whether to rent or buy a home in 2025, be sure to download our free rent versus buy checklist, which provides a comprehensive guide to calculating the costs and making the right decision for your situation. Click the link in the description below to get instant access.